Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk to you about mixing kick drum, in particular EQing kick drum. And this video will be the first video in a short series of how to EQ various aspects of drums, instrumentation, just to get you started quickly. The kick drum is a really important part of the drum kit because it is fundamental in driving the rhythm of the song along with the snare drum. Our job as mixers is to ensure that we can hear consistently every beat of the kick drum without losing too much in the way of dynamic range, depending on the style of music that you mix. Some styles of music demand that sort of heavy control, particular aggressive styles of music or dance music or hip hop. But the music I'm mixing today is a fairly standard blues / country style record. It has been very kindly provided by Steve Payne, to whom I'm ever thankful for the use of this song and these multi-tracks to be able to demonstrate this to you. Let me play a bit of the song so you get an idea of what we're working with.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe.
And then into the chorus.
I said, I think I left the oven on, I gotta go. If my house burns down, I'll be out in the cold.
Okay, it's a really fun tune. And so I've done a little bit of mixing on this, not much, hardly any plugins, just basically a static mix and some panning put into place. And the concept really is to keep your choices down to a minimum so that you can make decisions faster and get to the end result you want faster as well. Listening back to that mix, you may already have made some assumptions about the sound of the drums. So let's talk about that a little bit deeper. This video is going to be the first of a short series of videos about EQing drums and instrumentation. But today I just want to talk about kick drum, and stay tuned for the next video coming up on the channel, which will no doubtedly be about EQing snare. Let's take a listen to this kick drum on its own. Okay, what's that sound like to you? To me, it sounds a bit soft, a bit woolly. It's not really got much attack to it. And the most important aspects of a kick drum sound are the attack, the transient of the skin being hit by the pedal, by the beater head. The other important aspect of the kick drum sound is the low end, the power, the energy, the thump that we love to hear on a good old rock mix or any good mix, to be honest. And then it just sounds a little bit boxy or woolly, and so I think we need to take a little bit of that out. Now, there are frequency ranges that we can work within for the kick drum that will work time and time again. And it always seems to be the same areas or zones within the frequency spectrum of that particular instrument that I go to address a problem or to enhance something I like. So let's open up this SSL plugin that I've got on the kick. The SSL E channel, really great on drums. And I also think it's a really versatile channel strip. There is another option, well, another couple of options really. You've got the SSL, you've got the Neve, which is a different sort of sound, but it's got some really great features that make it sometimes even faster to work with than the SSL. And then you've got API. I don't have an awful lot of experience working on API, only SSL and Neve, so that's where I tend to default to. So for this video about Kick, I'm going to stick with the SSL 4000E, and what I do here is going to translate to any channel strip that you decide to use, whether it's SSL or Neve, API, anything. Okay. The areas that we're going to be addressing on this channel strip is mainly this centre section here, which is where all the EQ parameters live. At the top, we've got the option of having a shelf or a bell here for the very high frequencies. And similarly at the bottom, we've got the same option, a shelf or a bell. And that's a key concept that I want to get across to you today. And that is to have presets with all of the starting points for these frequency ranges already set up so that you can just select your preset and away you go. This is my kick start preset in the SSL. It's slightly different in the Neve because as you may or may not know or may not discover for yourself, that some frequencies are particularly nice in certain EQs, in EQ plugins. For example, the 10K shelf is particularly nice on the Neve channel strip that I use. And don't be afraid to mix and match. The concept of creating a starting point, a starting preset for each drum sound is what I want to get across to you today. So within this centre section here of the plugin, we've got a high mid and a low mid section. And the high mid section is where we'll do some boosts to accentuate the transient. And the low mid section is where we'll do some cuts to get rid of muddiness, boxiness, hollowness, that kind of thing. If you find that you run out of zones here, if you've run out of areas to boost and cut, then by all means follow up your channel strip plugin with another EQ. Even if it's a digital EQ, and I'll do that frequently, is if I'm still not quite got done what I feel as though I need to do tonally to the EQ, to the kick drum using a channel strip EQ, then I'll add the Pro Q3 afterwards to make the final adjustments. But as a starting point, to get really close to the finished tone, you can't beat a channel strip because it just cuts out all that choice that you have by using a digital EQ, where you can just keep putting points in and EQing up and down forever. Well, that's taken away from you with a channel strip, and you've got to make a decision with what you've got in front of you. Now, what I like to do is I like to EQ or make my EQ decisions at various zoom points within the mix. And what I mean by that is sometimes I'll make the decision in solo, then I'll listen to what I've done within the context of the drums and make some tweaks and adjustments, and then I'll listen to the whole mix to make my final decisions regarding the EQ. But a concept not to ignore is to use an EQ on your drum bus so that you're working in that kind of top-down scenario where you listen to the drums, and if you feel they're all a bit dull, you can put a nice bright shelf on at the drum bus, and similarly, if you're feeling they're a bit weak and lackluster, you can put a low shelf in. And that's something that we've got in place here. I'll just get rid of the SSL for now. All my drums are going through this drum bus. And so on this drum bus, I happen to have a limiter just to catch some peaks. But I also have a EQ-P1A, a Pultec. That is a good starting point for drums. We've got it set at a boost at 60 and a boost at 8. So let's just audition this, shall we? Solo up the drums. And this is what we would start off with. We listen to the drums tonally, make a judgment, make an assessment, whilst listening through the drum bus EQ. And the reason we're doing that is because that everything we do after that point is dependent on what you did here. If you were to apply this afterwards, you may find it's all a little bit heavy-handed and overkill. So it's nice to do the heavy lifting here at a higher drum bus level first before you start going in and applying EQ at track level. So you hear there, instantly we've got more thump to the kick and a bit more brightness and sizzle on the snare. And let's check that out in the mix. And that's done a really great job of bringing the drums forward in the mix before we've even got into individual tracks. So that's a great thing to do. Top-down mixing, well-known concept, and I do a mixture, a hybrid mixture, I suppose, of both, of going in and working at solo level, but also working at bus level and, of course, mix bus level with applying EQs. So let's now get into track level and do some more focused work. Let's solo up this kick, shall we? Listen to what that's doing now. So it still sounds a little bit woolly. Could do with more point to bring it out of the entire drum mix. So where's the point of the kick drum? The point of the kick drum is the smack of the beater head against the skin on the back skin of the kick drum. And you find that in this high mid section here. And you usually find it somewhere between 1.5 and 4.5. So let's do that then. Let's see if we can find where the point is on this kick drum. So I think it's feeling pretty good around about 3K. It's a bit kind of high at 4.5. It sounds nice, but a little bit too airy. So let's zero that again. And what I like to do is play a bar where there's no EQ being applied, and then start to boost. You're basically giving your ear the chance to be able to reset and hear the before as you start to apply the after. That makes sense. Okay, it's quite quick, but you definitely hear the dullness, your ear gets used to it, and then you go all in and you give it a nice healthy boost to probably go too far, and then dial it back to where you feel as though it feels about right. And that's the point of the kick drum, somewhere between 1.5 and 4.5. And it's all genre dependent as well. If you're working with metal music, it's notoriously nearer the 4.5 to 5K area to get the really clicky sounding kick drum. Very, very aggressive and non-relenting kick drum in metal music. But for this style of music, I think 3 is a good spot. So next I'll go and look at the low mids. This is where we're going to cut frequencies. So we're looking to clean up tighten up this drum sound, make it more compact and less woolly sounding. And the areas here to look at are somewhere between 350 Hertz and say 700 Hertz or 800 Hertz. So just in this small range here, okay? Just that's all you need to concentrate on. So I think thinking about these things in quadrants is perhaps a good idea. With the high mid frequency was between this top quadrant here. If you're if you remember in patterns, which is something I do, then remembering to work within this top quadrant here for the click, which will make sense. The high frequency is in the top quadrant, okay, which we chose about 3K. And then for the muddiness, the boxiness, the whatever it is we want to cut is in this left-hand frequency here. So the kind of muddy stuff is more further down in the frequency spectrum. So it's more to the left on looking at a traditional spectrum analyzer. So it's, if you think of it in terms of the left-hand quadrant in the lower mids on the SSL, that's going to be a great way to remember how to get rid of muddiness. So let's do that, shall we? It's at 0 at the moment, so I'm going to press play and give us a little bit of a boost there and see if we can hone in on this muddy frequency. So that felt as though I found the boxy frequency there around about 600 Hertz. So let's listen for a bar at 0 at unity, and then let's try pulling some of that out. Whether it's 6 dBs cut or 5.5 dBs cut, it doesn't matter. It's just how it sounds and feels to you, whether it feels tighter now and cleaner, okay? A lot of this is about how things feel rather than how they sound sometimes. Because this whole thing we do is all about emotion, isn't it? It's all about creating energy in another person, in that listener, and we want to make them move, and that's all about feeling. So let's check out what we've done now in the context of the drum mix. And what I'll do is, partway through, I will take the equalizer out. So I felt as though we'd done a good job there of cleaning up the drum sound, but in taking out that sort of 600 hertz, we lost the perception of the weight. So that's where we come down here now to this shelf and look at what we can do to bring back some of that weight. I've got it set to 58 hertz at the moment. So let's have a play around with that and see if we can introduce more of that weight back in. And so when you're thinking about the area to work in down here, we are working below 100 hertz, and we're looking for that weight, that chest thump, that, is really, those sorts of wavelengths are very large, very long, and these are the things that hit you in the chest, and that's what we're looking to bring out now in this kick drum. Okay, I'm going to zero that, and I'm going to do it again, quickly bring it back to the +9. Okay, so we got that weight back. Let's play that, and then I'll bypass the EQ. So now we've used a filter there, a shelf, to bring up everything from 50 hertz and below. You just want to make sure we're keeping a control on that rumble, on that really low stuff. We're looking for a tight sound here, a compact sound where it's got the power and the energy, but we don't want any of the flab, at the very low end of the frequency spectrum, the subby stuff. This is the stuff we need to control, because when we get the bass guitar in, it's all going to get quite heavy down there, and this all feeds up through our buses and up to the mix bus, and on the mix bus we're going to have a compressor probably, and the more low frequencies you send to that compressor, the more it's going to work, the harder it's going to work, and the more it's going to be audible, and you're going to start hearing pumping in the mix. So we need to keep a tight control on the low, really low stuff here, and it can be a fine balance. So let's control that in this drum mix we've got happening with this high-pass filter. High-pass filter here on the SSL starts at 16 hertz, but the zone we're looking at here to control is anywhere between 16 and 80 hertz. Let's see what we can do here with this low-cut filter. So what we're getting there is that we're still keeping the weight, but we are, weirdly, it sounds like you get more low end by using the low cut filter. So it also, weirdly, you may think what a crazy frequency to work towards with the low cut filter when we're doing a boost at 58 here. Surely we're cancelling it out by using a low cut at 70. No, we're not. We're just reshaping it. We've created that that shelf and it extends down the low frequencies. But what we're doing now is using a low cut to shape it, so it just creates a nice kind of bump the way that the filters cross over. So let's listen to that again. So it's quite subtle, but it is making a difference. But also, it's giving me peace of mind that I know that those lows are being tamed by this low cut. And even though it is subtle, I'd rather it be in place and know that those subs are being controlled than it not be in place and it then start to cause me problems as I'm building the mix up from this point, heading towards that stereo bus where we're going to try and cram all the sounds through. And that could be, in this case, it's a very moderate track list, but in some cases it could be in the hundreds. Let's listen to the kick now in context of the whole mix. One thing that I have noticed just by looking at the waveform of the kick is that it's very dynamic. So what I want to do is I'm going to dial in a bit more compression here. It's working very gently at the moment. I just want to dial in a little bit more compression as we listen to this mix, so that we get a more consistent kick. So I hope you heard that the compression there just brought the whole kick up in the mix. So that's going to help us fine-tune these EQs. So I'm going to play again now from that point, and I'm going to take out the EQ and bring it back in. So can you hear how lackluster the kick becomes? We lose the energy, we lose the focus. Yeah, we're probably losing a little bit in terms of volume as well, because we've done a lot of boosts here, pretty significant boosts at sort of 8 and 9 dBs. Done a 6 dB cut here, but the net effect plus the compression is probably affecting the level as well. But tonally, I can hear the thump from this 50 hertz, 58 hertz boost. But I still feel as though it needs a bit more cut. We've done a lot here at 3K, but the area to go to now to get that tippy top fairy dust cut, to try and get a little bit more of it anyway, is up here to this 8K shelf. So let's see what we can do with that. I'm going to bring the EQ back in. I'm actually going to take this low boost here down a touch. Once I was hearing it in the mix in the context of the bass guitar and everything else, just felt a little bit much. So now I want us to focus our attention on the top end of the kick again here. So you can hear that tippy top come in with a 15 dB boost. It's probably a little too much for this mix, so let's dial it back a bit. That feels about right. And the high shelf and the high mid area there are, they work together in shaping that top end of the kick. So we need to do little moves here just to push it a bit too far, pull these frequencies so that they are too quiet, and then you just start massaging them together so that you get the best sound possible across the entire kick here. In this mix, obviously it's a country blues type song, so I want the kick to remain natural sounding and not too artificially clicky. If anything now, because of the boosts in that high end and the compression, the kick could be a touch loud, so let's bring it down and get it blended back in with the rest of the kit and the mix. So rebalancing a couple of dBs off at the fader. So the boost we've added here with the high mids and the high shelf gives the apparent loudness a boost as well. So we're bringing the whole kick down by a couple of dBs. We've got room to perhaps add a bit more of the low stuff back. So it's all a game of massaging all these different gain parameters, EQs, compression. It's all, you're constantly moving and making decisions, these micro decisions as you mix. Once you get to this stage, you've got the sound in the ballpark area that you had in mind where it's beginning to sound good to you, then you move on. Listen to something else. Think about the guitars. Think about the vocals. Whatever makes sense to you, whatever catches your ear, and get used to the kick, how it feels now in the mix. Now you've made all these adjustments. And if something's not right, then it will continually prod you, poke you in the ear, tap you on the shoulder, and you'll get to a point where you've got to do something about it. And that's how you know it's not quite right, because it doesn't feel right. So go in and fix it. But to recap, the areas, the frequencies to set up in your channel strip plugin as a preset starting point for kick centre around these 4 or maybe 5 bands that we worked on today. So starting at the top, we have a high shelf that is set somewhere between 8 and 10k. Moving down to the high mids, we have a zone between 1.5 and 4.5 kilohertz that we work in to pull out the tap of the beta head against the skin and therefore the focus of the kick drum. The top quadrant, as I called it, the high frequencies, the top quadrant of the high mid section on this SSL plugin. Moving down to the low mids, we talked about the quadrant between 350 hertz and say 750 or maybe even 900 in some areas, and depending on the kick and everything else. But we're talking about that left-hand quadrant, and equating that left-hand quadrant with the left-hand side of a spectrum analyzer being that low-mid area. And with regard to the kick drum, that's the quadrant we're looking at to reduce boxiness, muddiness, hollowness. And you'll find that it's not too far away from that for the snare drum as well. Then we want the low end. We've taken some of that body, that hollowness out, and it's also taken away the perception of weight that we had with the kick. So now we need to bring that back, but bring that back in a controlled way and in a way where we want to place it so that it's not going to get all tangled up with the bass guitar, with the low end of the snare and with the toms and with the bottom end of the guitars as well. So the way that we can do that on the kick drum is to boost somewhere between 50 and 80 hertz. And in this instance, we looked at 58. And remember, the numbers that I'm boosting and cutting here mean nothing because it's all dependent on the tracks that you're working with. It could be that you only need to do very small moves here, depending on the quality of the recordings. It could be that you really need to boost or really need to cut. So that's completely up to you and down to your ear to decide how much to cut or boost. I've said it before on many occasions, to help you make that decision, use a reference track. Finally then, using high pass filter or a low pass filter, depending on what you're EQing. In this case, it's the kick drum, so less so important with a high pass filter, but it could be an issue if there happen to be a lot of cymbal bleed, for example, on your kick recording. So you just use a low pass filter there just to take that cymbal harshness out. That wasn't the case here. We just used the high pass filter to sharpen up the shelf boost that we did with the low frequencies here. Rather than it boosting everything, we decided to just dial in a little bit of a low cut filter to control the very sub frequencies here. Again, a decision that's made easier by using a reference track to decide how much low frequency sub energy to keep in your drum mix. So there's no such thing as a perfect EQ setting. It all depends on the tracks you're working with. But those bands that I've just explained to you and suggested that you work through when working with kick, I'm pretty sure they'll work on everything. Any normal drum kit, even if it's samples or if it's real drums, then those frequency zones are going to work for you in rock music and indie music for sure. And I'm pretty sure you're going to get success with those frequencies if you work in pop, even if you work in hip hop. Set them up as presets and you're golden. So I hope you found this video entertaining, if nothing else. What I really hope is that you've been able to store away in your memory banks, or at least on a notepad, those frequency ranges that are well worth committing to memory, or at least to a preset for the next time you EQ a kick drum. If you want to learn more from me about mixing drums, then in the description there's a link to a free workshop that I've put together all about mixing drums. So head down to the description, click the link, grab the multi-tracks and mix along with me as I teach you how to mix drums. So that's all from me, and I'll see you in the next video.